Hey YouTube, this is Bryce, and glad to have you here on this video. Going to talk about my story of leaving the LDS Church or Mormon Church, and not sharing it for any other reason, but just information so that you can apply it to your own journey, however it might help you. Um, I'm not I'm not trying to lead people away from the church. I still love and have many of my family in the church, and I just want to share my story so that so that you can be helped in some way if you're wanting to leave it or wanting to stay in it. Either way, I hope that this helps you just be a better person and more authentic in whatever it is you're living. Because some of the issues with me in finding out in recent months is just things weren't as they were taught to me, and so feeling a little bit betrayed by some of the truths that weren't shared with me. So just to go into my story a little bit more, I was raised in the church, grew up in the church, grew up in Arizona, and have 8 siblings, or we are 8 siblings, right in the middle, and we just grew up as a Mormon family. Went to church every Sunday. Um, yeah, not much more different there. But then um, my parents got divorced when just before my mission. So I graduated high school, and I put my papers in and was called to Argentina, and I still decided to go on my mission even though my parents were getting a divorce. And in a way, it kind of strengthened me that I was more you know I can do this, I'm on my own type of thing. That I love my parents individually. I can't change them, so I just have to do my own thing. I just have to love other people, and I can't change them. Only person I can change is me. And so made that decision, went on a mission, had a wonderful 2-year mission there in Argentina. Came back and met who later became my wife, and not met. We'd known each other for quite a while in that small town, and we taught dance together. She was going to BYU Idaho, and I had been admitted to BYU Idaho and BYU in Provo, and decided that I was going to choose BYU Provo, and we were still going to date around. We were going to figure out our own experience, just to see what else is out there. I don't know if I went on a date. I can't remember. But we ended up long distance dating between Rexburg and Provo for like six or more months. I should really have her here telling this, but dated for a while, and then we decided to get married. Got married in the temple, and then lived in Provo, and had babies pretty much immediately. We have 3 kids now, and interestingly enough, we did kind of feel pressured into having children so quickly. I wish that we had waited, because we were still figuring out our identities and figuring out who we were. So I kind of wish that we had waited a little longer. We didn't, and we love our children, and we're happy that we have them. But it's been quite the journey, just figuring our own identities out, and still even now with this faith transition and faith crisis, finding ourselves has been an amazing journey, and I've loved it. It's been super hard, but it's been amazing to be a part of it. And so I served in bishoprics there. I served in a married student ward for 2 different bishops. While I was there, I helped the transition from one bishop to the other. Served as the first counselor, and it was amazing. I loved the people that I served with. We loved all the students, and it was amazing to be in that calling. I was called to, after being released as first counselor, pretty much right after that, called to serve as a second counselor in a singles ward that we met in the law building on BYU campus. And I loved the bishop that I served with, and it was really good. My wife was a little bit annoyed, I guess, that I kept having these leadership calls, because she was alone with the kids the whole 3 hours. And it's not just 3 hours, it's the meeting that you have before the meeting, and then it's doing callings after the 3-hour meeting, which had changed to 2. I can't remember if it had changed to 2 while I was there. I believe it did. But that was hard. It was fulfilling, but it was hard. And after a while, I was invited to come into a disciplinary council, not for me, but for another young man that had been having issues with the law of chastity, that he was having premarital sex, and this had been probably the 3rd time that he was coming in for a transgression like this. And there were 4 of us in the room listening to this young man, and we listened and heard him out. The bishop asked him quite a few questions on the number of times that the transgression happened, and any details that we should know. Which it was all weird for me, because I didn't feel like this person was my counterpart, my same age, young 20s. And after a while, he was dismissed. We talked amongst ourselves. I really didn't say anything. I just let there was a high councilman, and there was and the bishop and the counselors there, and they talked, and they came to a conclusion to recommend a possible disfellowship, but most likely an excommunication, because this was the 3rd time that he was coming in for, I believe that he had been disciplined before. So anyways, I saw that, and I was like, whoa, you're just gonna toss him out? But the part that hurt me the most was that it wasn't just based upon the transgression and helping that individual, but it was also based upon, in the church's handbook, and I believe they've changed this, but based upon the good name of the church. So how many people knew about the transgression, and if it was large enough, and a lot of people knew about it, then it was more of a severe penalty for that type of a transgression or sin. And I saw that, and it was a little bit of something where I just kind of I don't know if I agree with that. Just kind of stuck that on a shelf, and just kind of, I'll put that away and I'll deal with it later. And that was a little bit, weird. But then after that, we moved after finishing school, after finishing my master's program. We moved to Arizona, in Queen Creek, Arizona, and it was a good experience there. The ward helped us move in, and a couple of things were lined up. My wife was about to have our 3rd baby. She was about 8 months pregnant, and we were both called in to teach the 8-year-olds. And when we showed up, the person in charge of the primary there put us in charge of teaching the sunbeams, 11 sunbeams. And my wife was pretty upset. She didn't say anything. She's not one to say anything, just to accept the calling and move on. And we had never, ever turned down a calling, ever. But at this point, after we taught that one Sunday and we realized that we couldn't do it, we let the bishop know that we were having a really hard time and that we don't think that this would be a good fit for us. And immediately that same Sunday, he comes to our house and lets us know that he doesn't want to allow us to take a break. I had let him know we just wanted to maybe just take a break for a little while. We had just, bought a new house. I was starting a new career in self-employment there. And we just needed a break. There was a lot going on. There was stress on our marriage, and we just needed some time. And he let us know that he didn't want to give us that time because he had seen what had happened to other people. And so that kind of made sense, but I was a little bit upset, and we ended up turning the calling down. Right, we weren't going to do it. And being in bishoprics before, I know what that's like, because in the bishopric and in a ward council, you have the top leaders of women, of men, over the young women, over the older women, and you talk about families in the ward that need help. And we knew that we were being talked about because we would show up to church, and people would just be treating us differently than they were before. And we didn't really like that. We're like, we don't want to be a project. We just want to get help through this, this hard time in our life, so we can have our child here in a month. And yeah. And so and I know that bishop had every, right intention. He just wanted to help. And I understand that, and I see that. Yeah, just hard to be on this side, needing some space and not being allowed to have some space, that you're meant to feel more guilt by turning down a calling where you should be magnifying your calling and accepting callings, and callings are good trials for you to be able to overcome. And that, yeah. Anyways, and these are just kind of things that kind of led up to me having a lot more questions. Eventually, I was given the call to teach the gospel doctrine course, or class, which is for everyone that's older, right after sacrament meeting, which sacrament meeting everyone goes to, and then just the adults go to this gospel doctrine course, and all the younger children go to primary and their other classes. And so I was an instructor along with two other instructors for this class, and we would alternate Sundays. And the other instructor had been teaching there for about 2.5-3 years, and he was a great teacher. I loved teaching because I was able to ask questions, and comments would really lead the discussion. We would just lead discussion after discussion, and there was a lot of engagement, and people really felt the spirit, and that was wonderful, because people could really, they would come up to me and say, "Hey, thank you for teaching. You do a really good job at inviting the Spirit." And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted us to feel good, to understand, to know more about the kingdom of God, of what that meant for each of us. And I was released about 6 months after I was called, and in my releasing, he let me know that it was nothing that I had done, just a normal, changing of things. And it was at that point that I kind of wondered. I was like, whoa. So I guess potentially, I could have been removed for something that I had done, because that hadn't occurred to me before. Because I've released many people and given many people callings. But I thought back on what I was teaching, and there were things that I saw in what I was teaching that might have been a reason or grounds for me being removed. And after that, I didn't have a calling for a little while, and then I was a substitute for primary. I would go and sit in when there wasn't enough teachers. So a couple of things that I had taught and that I remember teaching that might have been a little bit strange was I had taught about the premortal existence, or when that was in the lesson. And as we know in the Mormon Church, that before we came to this earth, there was a big council in heaven where Jesus and Lucifer, or Satan, were presenting their different plans. And Jesus's plan was that we would be given a body, free agency, and we'd be able to choose to come back. And Lucifer's plan was that he would make us choose the right thing so that we could all come back. And that's the idea. A third of the hosts of heaven chose Satan's plan, or Lucifer's plan, and 2/3 chose Jesus's plan. And God revealed that that Lucifer would become the devil, and that all of his followers would not receive a body, but that they would inhabit the earth as spirits, and they as devils, and they would try to lead people astray on earth, and that they would never receive a body, and have that test of faith. Before dying and hopefully be reunited with God after. And I had always had a little bit of issue with that, and so I asked the question in this Sunday school course of, are these the third of these hosts of heaven that are now devils, are they ever going to have a chance like us to be able to repent, to be able to be forgiven, to have a body, to have the same experiences that we can have, so that they can return and all live together in the celestial kingdom, which is the highest level of happiness after someone passes and goes on. And a resounding no. Many people backed it up with scripture. They said, no, there's not going to be a chance for those, because they denied Jesus and God and their plan. They became devils forever. And as I was thinking, I was like, well, crap, like, I'm really glad that I'm on this side of things instead of being on that side of things. What if I had made a bad decision, and was just on the wrong side of the dice. So, and after they disagreed with me, I had made the comment of, and it wasn't really heated or anything. It was just normal. I had made the comment of, and I do this with every gospel principle or doctrine, that I would boil it down to the perspective of a child and a parent. So me, I'm a father. So like, if I know that I'm going to give my children every chance for them to return to me, if they've been led astray by something, or they're sinning, that they can come back, that they can do better, and they'll always have that chance. Always. I will never, ever take that chance away from my children, because I love them unconditionally. And I would think that God would do the same, because if he's my father, and that would make sense for him, for me and him, I would think that would make sense for these third, which is a large number of people, a third of all the people that are ever going to live on the earth, to be cast out, And so, and with many gospel principles, I did teach it like that I said, well, I mean, for it to make sense to me, like, this is how it would make sense, because it's between, a father and a son. That gospel principle is more simple, boiled down, and it makes more sense to me. And there wasn't a whole lot of controversy, but I can see how that can be controversial. And I was released, maybe for something along the lines of those lines, and maybe not. But I was just kind of surprised that getting so many people commenting that they were loving these classes, and but yet being released, only 6 months into the calling, where there's 2 other people that had been there 2 and 3 years. You would think they would release one of those guys, but they didn't, and I don't know why. So just kind of another shelf item that I just kept put aside, and And at my work, I worked with a lot of non-Mormons and ex-Mormons, people that were no longer a part of the church. And I had always asked some of them, like, so what do you believe now? And they would have answers like, well, just being a good person, and just loving my family, and trying to do things that are good. And I always thought that answer was pretty flat. I was like, well, you don't have the truth. You don't know what happens after this life. You don't know a lot of things, so that doesn't really make sense to me for you to just be a good person. I don't think it's enough to be able to get to to be reunited with your family forever. You have to have covenants. Like, it seems silly to me. But things progressed to the point where I had so much cognitive dissonance in my mind that I was led to want to know more about all of the gospel principles that I was taught and the gospel doctrine, to be able to dive into them. And one statistic that I had seen was the numbers in Institute, which is the classes that are taught usually in college, when someone's going to college, that they would go into this course called Institute, and it's kind of a extension of seminary, which is something that you're taught while you're in high school, kind of an everyday religion course. And the numbers for Institute had inverted. That if years past, there was an attendance rate of like 70% to 80% of people that graduated from seminary went on to Institute. And for BYU, it's a little bit different because you actually have religion courses at the school that you take for like college credit. But a lot of these other schools like ASU and different California schools, they have Institute, and that is the gathering of where a lot of the ward members and the singles ward people will go and learn, and they'll have and it might not be every day, but these numbers in recent years have kind of flipped. That a lot of the young members of the church were no longer going to Institute. A lot of them were leaving the church. And the attendance numbers flipped from being like 70 to 80% to like 30 to 20%. I don't know how exactly accurate that is, but basically there was a large reduction in Institute attendance. And the question that I always had is why? Why are so many of these young people just falling off the face of the earth? Like, we had kind of heard, in the church that, the best and brightest of the church will leave. And also that be careful about educating yourself, because educated people tend to be led astray and leave the church. And so all of these things started a really solid cognitive dissonance for me to want to question a lot of the things that I had been taught, because the regular answers of read the scriptures, pray, know it's true, and believe, and go on. I felt more like a sheep just following blindly, instead of somebody that's making decisions for myself. And so moving on from that, I had heard with a lot of people leaving, a lot of the young people, that they were reading something called the CES letter, or Church Education System CES letter, which is a letter written by Jeremy Runnels, an RM, a returned missionary in California, who had a small young family, and he was given the opportunity to write a letter of different issues that he had, different questions that he had with the church, and sent those in to one of his father's acquaintances at the church education system, or the one that's over institutes and over a lot of gospel research. And so I'd heard about that. I was terrified to read it, because one, I had been taught never to trust anything on the internet, especially if it's coming from anyone besides the Quorum of the 12 or the First Presidency of the Church, or the church website. Anything that was about the church but not from the church, be very cautious, because that's anti-Mormon literature. And that anti-Mormon literature scared me, and it told me, or at least I thought, that I would lose my testimony, that I would lose my place, my eternal family, that I was trying to build with my wife, and we had made covenants to have this eternal family. And so I talked to my wife, and I said, I have pretty large questions. There's this thing called the CES letter. This is what it's about. Told her about the Institute thing. I believe I had mentioned to her the essays that the church has written on several controversial topics that are listed on the church website. I think I had looked through a few of those before talking to her, and saying, hey, this feels like a big Pandora's box to me. I feel like if we go there, that we might get hurt, and we might lose testimony, whatever. And so I'm willing to put this aside to just be with you, and to just bury that away, and we'll move forward how we have been. And I love my wife. She said, no, we need to just take care of these questions so that we can serve better and we can be better. Which she did have a belief that going through the CES letter and going through these different things would strengthen our faith and testimonies, that we would just get these questions figured out. But it turned out that many of these questions that I had were listed in the CES letter, and another letter called Letter for My Wife that we ended up reading later on, which is another compilation of mainly quotes from church officials, from presidents, prophets, from general authorities, through General Conference, and many other church history documents like the Joseph Smith Papers. And it obliterated me. I was shocked. I was surprised. And when I had finished reading all the church essays, the essays, the gospel topic essays is what they're called, and on these different topics like blacks in the priesthood, polygamy, polyandry, the Book of Abraham, like a lot of these issues, and if you don't want to go there and read them, that's fine. I'm supportive of people in the church, supportive of people out of the church. It's just a personal decision. But I wanted to know, and I guess a good question to ask yourself is, if it was different than how you were taught, would you want to know? And if you do, you have to kind of know that might change your worldview, which can be really hurtful to you, and maybe not hurtful, but it can cause a lot of pain, because you're basing a lot of your life's decisions on those truths, on those doctrines, on returning to the celestial kingdom, returning to God, and how to get there. So I won't go into all of the specifics, and I'll just give my emotional story, just so that you can see that journey, and maybe I'll do another video just on different of those issues, and how those felt towards me. Again, not to try and lead anyone away from the church, but to give them more strength in their decision for what they want to do for themselves and for their lives. We were in a very low spot, but we also felt so much love for each other because we felt so alone. We were the only people in a very dark room, and so that was a very special moment for us. But we decided that we had to tell our families, and I won't go into too much detail here because I love our families. But ultimately, we were very disappointed that that we weren't given space to be understood. That to question like this is okay as long as you end up with the right answer, but to leave the church means something worse than almost than death. Like some stories of my close friends is that that have also left the church, is that their parents have expressed them that it would have been better had they died than to leave the church. So that's pretty hard. And so many months we've gone on to research more. We don't take this lightly at all. We go deep into our feelings, deep into the logical things, things that that maybe the church just hadn't told us, that we'd found, which I won't go into here. But ultimately, we knew that we loved our children so much, and we loved our family so much, that we wanted the best for them. And for example, if one of my children were to grow up and find out that they were gay, I would want them to be loved, appreciated, and accepted for that. And unfortunately, in the church, there's been many policies about gays and them not practicing and stuff. But I didn't want any of that. I just want to love my children and have a passion for helping them with their passions. And we had felt that having a destination goal of being an eternal family and being together forever, we can still have that, and we still believe that we will have an equivalent of that, of something. If that exists, yeah, we want that. We want to be together after this life. And instead of setting a goal for us to keep every commandment and do everything that we're supposed to do as a good Mormon, as a good member of the church, so that we could get to the celestial kingdom and be together as a family forever, seeing that as a destination goal. Instead, I would rather like to see just a goal where we, get together often. We share each other's ideas. We don't all have to think the same. We don't all have to, be the same. We just need to be there for each other. We need to love each other. And for my wife and I, it's really hard for us to be, not really accepted into the family because we've chosen out. We've chosen something different. And that makes us different. But just because we don't like baseball, for example, that doesn't mean that we should be thrown out of the family. And for protection on our families, I know that they love us. I know that they're trying to include us, and we're all trying to figure this out. It's just a really strange thing for someone to do. You just don't walk away from the church. It is everything for you. And so that's kind of my story. And now, strangely enough, a lot of what my beliefs are around being a good person, loving other people, being charitable, being helpful, and with no other condition than that. Not a condition that you're keeping certain commandments, or that you'll only receive love if you are practicing a certain way. And I know that the church is changing and adjusting, and hopefully stories like this can be something for that, so that people can have a little bit more open mind towards people that are having these types of experiences, like me and my family. So that's what I wanted to share, you guys. I hope that was helpful. Give this video a like, a share, comment any questions, and maybe I can cover other videos in the future. But I just wanted to put this up so that hopefully somebody can glean something helpful from it. It's been something that's been very painful for me and for my wife, for our young family. But it has been something of a strength for us as well. You can take your deepest, darkest pains and you can turn them around into something very beautiful. So if that's where you are, know that you're supported, that you're loved, and that you can make it. You can make it through this, and that you can find your identity, whatever that is, inside the church, outside the church. Yeah. So, anyways, thanks for being a part of this community. Hope to put out some more videos that can be of help. So, have a wonderful day.